Building your company brand and your employee brand is not just a marketing strategy designed by an agency. The most important factor of success is the employee engagement. In my book, Own Your Story or Someone Else Will, I encourage CEOs to become the chief brand ambassador. Because if the leader of the pack doesn't spread the news about the company, walks the talk, why should you expect your employees to do the job? And what about your employees? How to empower them to post company news, to share positive experiences online. Why should they, by the way? I invited Patrick De Pauw, co-founder and CEO of Social Cedar, to share his experiences in building brand ambassador platforms for companies. We talked about the misunderstandings and the pitfalls, how to find the best brand ambassadors in your company, how to guide and to train them to become content creators. So I hope you enjoy our talk. Welcome to the Own Your Story podcast, the place to learn about personality branding, thought leadership, and how to capitalize your reputation. In other words, how to own your story. I'm your host, Ianka, former actress turned into six-figure entrepreneur, author, and keynote speaker. Let's get started. We kind of met on stage, didn't we, during the LinkedIn sales event?
Yes,
in
it
spring.
was the first time we met.
We met ever. And I gave a keynote on why both company branding and employer branding as a marketing strategy fails if there is no employee engagement. And you also talked about employee engagement and brand ambassadorship. So I was wondering, what is your definition of employee engagement?
There's so many definitions, but basically the sole definition is employee engagement are people that really like to work for your company, and they like to talk about their company, and they like to talk about it with their friends, but they also like to talk about it with their colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
That's for me the sole reason. It's they are somewhere happy. You can't always be super happy, but they are proud and happy on where they work, and they want to show it, and they want to talk about it.
Yeah. And is that an extraordinary feeling to be happy within your job? For me,
it seems so.
It does? Because you're sitting on a lot of data, so I suppose you have data on how happy people are in their jobs.
Well, happy is perhaps a bit too far, because we don't really go into the phase of are they really happy, but we do see how many. There's some levels that we have data on. That's basically how many people in a company are willing to, from time to time, discover their company. So not only the products, but also the company and what they are doing, what they stand for. And then the second phase is, if they discover that, are they also interested to share it? And then the last step is, obviously, if they share it, how much impact does that create?
Yeah.
But I see it everywhere. We work, or at least we have experience with about 300 organizations. Obviously, there's a big difference between a small organization and a startup, and let's call it a big full-blown bank. But we do see that at this moment, the engagement level worldwide, but also in Europe, is a worry for lots of companies. It's low at this moment, at least lower than before COVID.
Is that main reason, do you think, or is it just one of the reasons?
No, well, I think COVID is one of the reasons. I think COVID is also, I would say, a timing where lots of things happened. Next to COVID, there were other things happening as well. There's the digitalization that went like hell. Also, perhaps thanks to COVID, and then you have obviously the remote working that everybody knows. But I think it's a combination of a new generation, new values, remote working, work-life balance. So it's a combination of culture and generation, I think.
Yeah, and lots of people became aware of what they were doing in their lives, because we all had to stand still and think about, because world suddenly changes during COVID. And for the upcoming generation, it's it's their way of growing up. But for our generation, it is really a mindfuck. It's really becoming aware and an awakening of how we are handling our jobs. I think that's my
It's
impression.
true, and it's still it's the reality is that most of CEOs of companies they don't have the age of 25, they have the age of 50 or 60.
Yes,
So for them it's completely different. They don't
yes,
really know how to react on it, and that I
yeah,
think is something that is
yeah,
I saw it this morning as well when I visited the company. You see that there's a big difference in what the company often there's even a big difference in what the company wants because they all realize that there's something wrong and that they need to do something, but the question is it also in the board of directors? Do they
yeah,
realize it? Because these are the people that should realize it first, and often it's not yet the case.
yeah. So there's a lot of work to be done for you and me in that part. I read somewhere on your website that HR should embrace social media. And because I was researching social theater and what you were doing exactly, etc., I thought indeed we are always talking about employee engagement and employer branding as a marketing strategy. But of course, if you want your employees to be engaged, you need to be HR to be in the game. Is Are you targeting the HR department in your work with social theater?
We target HR because in what we see normally is that employer branding and engagement should be part of HR. It should be part of HR. So it's logical that we also target HR. In most of the companies, it's not yet like this. HR is still hard. They call it hard HR, and so it's a very good question because I don't know whether and I don't again I'm not targeting anybody, but I think HR is going through a revolution like marketing had a revolution 15 years ago with
Mm-hmm.
social media and internet, and now I think it's coming at HR as well. But we see that often there's still a lack of skills, capabilities. HR departments aren't overstaffed because often they
Mm-hmm.
see it as a cost, which is strange because HR should not be a cost.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the biggest problem. So the answer is yes, we should, and we target HR, but it's not always easy to have the right people or to,
Yeah.
to, to give them the awareness of what employer
Yeah.
branding and employee engagement is.
Yeah, they at least should work together with the people who do the marketing. So marketing and HR should work together. That's the ideal scenario, I suppose.
Marketing HR, if you have communication should be in there as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
And again,
Yeah.
for me, like I said this morning when I went to visit a big company, for me there should be honestly, the CEO should be around the table as well,
Yeah.
because he
Yeah.
is the person who will benefit the most
Yes.
of a higher engagement.
Yes. Yes. But as I told you on stage at the LinkedIn sales event, they like to hide. CEOs, most of the CEOs like to hide, and they don't like to attend meetings like that, I suppose, because otherwise you wouldn't say that.
No, and I do think it's something where specifically also in Belgium, there's a bit more work to do than, for instance, in the Netherlands. I do
Hmm.
see a difference. I had also a
Okay.
conversation with somebody on Friday that said that do you also see that there's still a difference in mentality in Belgium compared to I'm just comparing to the Netherlands, and it is true,
Hmm.
but it's really important because I mean it's the basics of your economy as well.
Indeed. Now, going back to these happy customers and happy employees, they make good ambassadors because if your customer is happy, they talk about the product in the company, but employees as well. So you need to find those. Let's focus on the employees. It's easier said than done than finding those happy employees in the company. But then there is social cedar. You're there to find them, aren't you?
There's always somebody. There should be always.
There should
No,
be at least one, at least
the-
one
the-
employee who is happy.
no, I have to be honest. I've never been to a company where there's
No.
not even one single person happy. So there's always somebody happy, or
Yeah.
somewhat happy. Let's call it that way.
Okay.
So in most of the situations, we see that there's like, we call it the 1% rule. There's around 1% of the people that actively, um, spontaneously share from time to time something. And what is good is that we see that more and more HR, for instance, are aware of this. So more and more
Mm-hmm.
we see that HR says like, oh yeah, we know that that person, they are really active on social media and they share these very nice
Okay.
stories. So that's the first step. If you don't have that step, then you have to go back to your company and ask yourself the question, why did I start at this company? Because if
Mm-hmm.
nobody wants to work for me, then I have a serious problem, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always like when somebody falls in the street, the first person that is there to help them, they're the real leaders. So you look for the real leaders, and there's always somewhere a real leader.
Mm-hmm.
And once you invite that real leader to officially become your ambassador,
Mm-hmm.
that's the person that is going to be able to
Yeah.
encourage others also
Yeah.
to become ambassadors.
And how does a social seeder help you build platforms for companies?
Well, social cedar, what we do is basically we have a combination of a methodology where we have workshops where we try to really define it, because this is also something, if employee engagement and employee advocacy and employer branding, you can, perhaps we will talk about that later, but it's often seen as something fluffy, but it's not fluffy.
Mm-hmm.
You can
Mm-hmm.
really put KPIs on there. You can say like, this is what I want as an outcome. So that's an exercise we do. And then obviously we have a platform. For me, software is something that helps you. It's not the basics. It's not only the software that will help you. There's lots of ingredients that you need to have inside the company, but the software will help you getting a grip on it, manage it,
Mm-hmm.
look at the results, and this is what we do.
Yeah.
And often the results are not positive at all, but then
Or-
at least you know it. And this is
Yeah.
also already the first insights you can have is it doesn't work. Okay,
Yeah.
fine.
So that is one of the first conversations you're having, saying it's not looking good.
No, basically the first conversation we have is, do you have enough stories in your company? Content, we call it content, call it stories.
Mm-hmm.
So everything which is not
Mm-hmm.
the commercial
Yeah.
blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have that, then you have a problem. Because what are you
Yeah.
going to ask your ambassadors to do? They're
Yeah.
not going to share commercial videos. Then, so
Yeah.
it's basically you have to work on your culture. You have to make your culture visible, and it's not. You don't make it visible just by, I don't know. We had these hilarious examples of companies that created for an extreme high amount for very professional videos,
Mm-hmm.
and then there was no
Yeah.
money anymore.
Yeah. The budget
And
was
so
gone.
the whole budget was on 4 videos, which were professionally perfectly made, but they were even made without the people themselves of the company.
Yeah.
So they were
Probably played
made
by
with actors.
actors. Yes. Probably. Yes. Yeah.
And that was then the story that they asked their coworkers to spread out. And that's not the
Yeah,
way to do
it's not,
it.
no, no. Now you mentioned that's one of the first questions you ask. Do you have stories? In my experience with my clients, they often say, I don't have a story. I have nothing to tell. So what should I talk about? They seem not to realize or feel that there are stories everywhere, and they're lacking
Yes,
the experience of story catching.
yes, because basically, Ianka, I think we think the same about it. Everything you see and everything you do is a story. It's
Hmm.
I have a very nice example of this. It's a big ICT company that has their head offices in Belgium, and we were in the boardroom, and the person that was trying to create the employer brands to create more engagement said like, Patrick, we really have a problem because we don't, like you said, we don't have a story to tell.
Hmm.
We don't know what story to tell was even. And I said, this is strange because when I look around this boardroom, I think it was around 16 pictures of how you did,
Uh-huh.
how you worked in 1950s, in the
Yes.
60s, in the
Yeah.
70s, with the old IBM
Yeah.
computers. Um, these are stories. The stories
Yes.
are just there to catch, but you don't see them anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
As just an example how.
Yeah. You become blind of your own stories. That's one of the
Yes,
things.
I think you become blind of your own stories. I think history is a story.
Mm-hmm.
Your where you are is a story. Obviously, your people are a story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the, 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 without a story, you don't have a company. This is
Mm-hmm.
something I don't really get. But
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I do understand, Ianka. Before I had the same. Idea in beginning when social media, specifically professional social media. Let's talk about LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
I had the same idea, like, what the hell can I put on LinkedIn that would be interesting for the people to read?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's also a learning. It's something that you can learn. It's something,
Of
and you have to
course.
take time for it. I think,
Yeah.
Ianka. This is the
Yes.
first thing that somebody told me. It's not going to go all the time. It doesn't
No.
appear suddenly. You just need to focus. You just need to schedule focus time to do this. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Let us go through the ambassador program, the way you build the ambassadors within a company, how you guide your clients to become brand ambassadors and to really grow the advantage of having these happy employees talking about the company all over the place on social media. So the first thing you have to find is you have to find out why. Why should you do that? What is your goal? What are the main reasons why they start an ambassador program?
The main reason is still the basic main reason is if we all do a small effort,
Mm-hmm.
the difference will be enormous because basically, if a company drives well, goes, is growing, it has an immediate advantage
Yeah.
for the coworkers. There's some secondary reasons. It's always very fun to look for your new colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
People like to look themselves and to find themselves new colleagues. The third one, and that comes close to, I would say, personal branding. We do see that there's already companies that are really putting some more and more effort on. As a coworker, it's always better to grow your network
Mm-hmm.
because it's also it can be interesting for you as a private person, but it can for sure be interesting for you as a professional person.
Yeah.
This could be very interesting for our future. You could be able to normally you are able to grow faster eventually than somebody who doesn't care. So there's quite a lot
Yeah.
of reasons, but one of the things that we try to avoid is that there's, for instance, a financial reason. I
Mm-hmm.
think again that ambassadorship and engagement is something that it should always we need to it needs to be authentic.
But what do you
Um,
mean by a financial reason? That they get paid to become an ambassador? Do you
that
mean
they get
that?
paid, that they get you can become our ambassador, and everything every time you share, you get something in return. Now, basically, we see that in most of the companies they don't want to do it like this
Mm-hmm.
anymore. There's also fiscal
Mm-hmm.
reasons not to do that. Um, but the problem is that it's Pavlov's dog. You always need to give something to get something in return, and basically, this is not the definition of employee engagement.
Mm-hmm.
Employee engagement for me, the definition is that people they care, but they care because they do it spontaneously and they really care. It's not that they care. Okay,
Yeah.
I will do something because I get something in return.
Yeah. So I was always thinking that if they would if an employer would ask me to become the brand ambassador, I would ask, what's in it for me? So
But there's a
what's in
lot.
it for
That,
them?
first of all, there's the first link between employer branding and personal branding, because
Mm-hmm.
if you're active as a professional person in your company, it's also good
Mm-hmm.
for your personal branding. So that's already the first thing. Like I
Mm-hmm.
said, the second thing is you can look for colleagues. It could often they link it to LinkedIn courses, for instance. That's
Yeah.
something that we
Yeah.
advise companies, like, okay, if you want to give something in return to your ambassadors, you can give them LinkedIn
Yeah.
courses. You
Yeah.
can most of the companies, they have like a summer barbecue for the ambassadors. There's some
I
things you can do.
like that. Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
uh,
yeah,
that basically there's quite a lot of things you can do,
yeah.
but
The
it's
in-
not always things that are very, that it
yes,
doesn't need to cost a lot of money. That's what I'm
yeah,
saying.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And interesting. I don't want to call it a reward because it shouldn't be a reward. If your employer asks you to become a brand ambassador and you agree because you like working there, then to me it's natural that he also agrees in you building your personal brand. And you already said, okay, when you're a brand ambassador, you are building your personal brand. And I do not completely agree with that because a personal brand is also adding something of your own that isn't your job, is also talking about other things that isn't about the company, etc. But not often or not always employees are allowed to do that. So I think it's important that the CEO or the HR or whoever decides that really agrees on that. Become a brand ambassador, and we will help you build your personal brand because that is of a added value for us as an employer as well. That's my opinion. What is
First of
yours?
all, let me perhaps, because I also agree, I fully agree that it's not only about what you do as a job that makes your personal brand. I fully agree. It's always the combination of, and you see more and more also private things
Yeah.
coming into, and I think it's good because everybody is a person. That makes you authentic, by the way. Otherwise, you're not
Yeah,
authentic.
and more credible
Um,
as well. Because otherwise, if you have an employee who only talks about the job, that's boring as well, isn't it?
that's true. But we have already companies that go as far as saying like, if you join and you want to become our ambassador. So the first step we already discussed is going to be you will have an advantage because you will grow your network, which could make part of your career inside our company or outside our company. We have whys where there's also stated outside our company, which I find very interesting because that means that the company goes as far as we are willing to also invest in you, um, and you will grow your network. You will become perhaps more popular, and you will get into the spotlights of other companies, which is basically great because if everybody does the same thing, we are also able to pick other people. So it's you see that, but again, we have some companies where we're there's there's a very big difference at this moment, Ianka. There's companies that
Yeah.
are really going very far in how to really engage their coworkers, and there's other companies that tell me, look, Patrick, I'm not going to start with a program like this because what will happen is if these people start to become active on LinkedIn, they will be headhunted immediately by my
Yes.
competitor. That's a very strange reason why you shouldn't start such a program.
Yeah. Well,
It's because you're afraid that every
yes, yeah, but fear is a bad advisor, but it is a big fear of nowadays when there's a war of talent. War for talent. I do understand the fear, but it really is a pity that CEOs are so restricted to that. And I would
yeah,
turn it
it's a bit.
I would turn it the other way. Sorry, you go ahead. These days, maybe our generation, maybe not ever me, but um, could be working at the same employer for 30, 40 years, but that's not going to happen anymore nowadays. It's 5 years. If you're the best, it's 10, and that's it. So if you have an employee who is leaving the company, gets headhunted, but then talks well about you in that new network, that's an extra advantage, isn't it?
For me, this is also the way I see it. I have the old-fashioned example of, oh, okay, so if you're not in control of what they are saying about your company, for instance, because that's also often one of the reasons why they don't want to start a program like this. Um, so you don't want to do it because you're afraid that somebody will tell something wrong about your company. Okay, fine, but you can't do anything about it because in a cafe they will talk about your company anyhow. And what is worse is you can't control it.
Yeah.
If it's on social media, you can still control it. You still have a view on it. So I don't see why. So there's companies that prefer not to communicate at all because they're afraid of bad communication, which is again, fear is a bad, like I just said. But these are all the barriers that we see now. It's improving. We see that
Mm-hmm.
there's an improvement. And again, we all know. I think I'm not saying for every type of candidate, but there's lots of everything is specifically through COVID, the IT, the development, the technology, we talk about AI, GPT, it's going so fast that I think in lots of companies perhaps you don't want people to stay for 15 years
Mm-hmm.
because it's
Yeah.
changing so quickly. You
Yeah.
always need other people, so
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Even
it's a
jobs
complete
are
different.
changing. Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Jobs are changing. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So you mentioned in one of your ebooks that you have different kind of ambassadors, and a power ambassador, an internal and an external ambassador. Can you give me what do you mean by that? Do you mean customers and employees, or what do you mean by that?
Also because we still have companies that are using no asking, because you can't use people, you can ask people that are asking external ambassadors. You have also hybrid companies where they've lots of consultants.
Uh-huh.
Consultants are half in, half out, depends on. So you can the first circle is the one of your co-workers, where first of all we advise that every single co-worker can become an ambassador, that you don't make any difference between, and I absolutely don't like the termination of white and blue collar, but you don't make a difference between these people. Everybody in your company should be able at least to show that they like to work for the company.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing. And then you have the second level where you can work like with car companies that have dealerships. Then obviously you can ask your dealers, because the more these people, often they don't have time, they don't have the knowledge on social media, so they have all the advantage to become an ambassador as well. And then we have companies that even go as far as, okay, but then we also have some customers that can become an ambassador. The only difference between internal and external ambassadors is you need to keep the frequency very low for external ambassadors. Don't think that an ambassador, even if you're absolutely crazy about a company, they're not going to share every week things about
Uh-huh.
their company. So we do have some important differences between an external and important internal ambassador. And then internally, what we see is obviously you have the different levels. We call it an idle ambassador, somebody who just, and for us, and not only for us, for lots of companies, the basic level is that be, they would already be very lucky if they know that people read these specific contents that is so fundamentally making their employer brand.
Mm-hmm.
So the first step is, I'm already showing interest. I want to read about their corporate social responsibility initiatives or whatever. So it's the reading phase. We call that idle ambassadors. Then you just have active ambassadors. They read and they will share from time to time whenever. And we also know out of statistics that even if you're an ambassador, you share one type of content on three. So if you get three invitations to discover
Yeah.
something on general, you will only share one on three. So you don't share
Mm-hmm.
everything. Then we have what we call power ambassadors. They're a bit more, and often they're a bit more commercial people. And then
Mm-hmm.
we have the contributors, and then you go very quickly into your
Yeah.
domain, people that are really very busy on LinkedIn, that want to
Yeah.
create their network on LinkedIn. And these are, for
Yeah.
us, we call them contributors.
Yeah, and you measure all of them, so you find out who's the idle one and who is stepping up to the next phase, etc. You could point them out.
Yeah, yes, we can point them out, and this is what it makes it so interesting, because you can start seeing differences between similar companies. You can start seeing differences between, I don't know, um, uh, like for instance, delays or call right, just to make so companies that have a bit the same
Mm-hmm.
level of activity, and then the very interesting thing is that you can quickly see whether there's a good culture, a great culture, a not so great culture. These things you see, because obviously, if you invite 100 people and then you come back after a month saying like nobody wants to become an ambassador, you have a problem.
Yeah,
because
yeah,
then
yeah,
there's
yeah,
a
yeah. But
problem,
I
obviously.
am imagining the conversations when you bring the news.
No, but we cannot share, we will never share information from other companies, but uh, we can work with data. We can just say like, okay,
Yeah. On
this is
average, you are
basically
this and that.
on
Yeah.
average, yeah, you're in a poor result or you're in a really
Yeah.
great result. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
they are really interested. Once you start talking about how other companies are dealing with these problems, then you really have the attention.
yeah, 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 of course, because that's the competitive edge, of course.
Of
Now,
course.
so you mentioned the reasons to start with an brand ambassador program, and it's growing your revenue as a company. It's recruiting new talent. And the third one was, and I thought that was a bit like building legacy, or at least that's what I hope it is, because in my book, Own Your Story or Someone Else Will, I want to empower CEOs to not only use personal branding or brand ambassadorship as a way of marketing, as a way of growing revenue and recruiting talent, but also building legacy that is meaningful and can be given towards the next generations. Is is that a reason as well, or are we not there yet? Is it just the
No,
first
no,
two?
it's are we there yet? Probably not. But is that a reason? Yes, that's it's. I know again, it's a hollow. So the word meaningful. You need to create a meaningful company. Everybody wants to at least.
Yeah, have purpose,
If you would
etc.
ask
Yeah,
any CEO, everybody will say, "Yes, I want to create a meaningful
yeah,
company."
yeah.
Okay, but there's a difference between meaningful and meaningful because, and this is also
Mm-hmm.
everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody can. So the first step is everybody needs a story, and everybody has a story. The second step is your story different than the others because it's you need to have your own story. You have to
Mm-hmm.
create your own story. And then the second step, and this is what yeah, the third step, and this is what you say. In these days, you also need to have a meaningful story, and this is something that we see. We have the first um, feedback of companies where because the big problems that companies have with uh, all the meaningful legacy things that they are working with is
Mm-hmm.
these types of initiatives. They are very difficult with traditional marketing. You can't really get it out because it's not seen as authentic.
Mm-hmm.
They call it very quickly greenwashing.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a problem because uh, quite a lot of companies, they already have really good initiatives, but it's just staying internally. They have no real
Yeah,
nice way to get it out there, and so
yeah,
it's not nobody notices it. And this is where again your own people can make a very big difference.
yeah.
And what we see already now is that was the point I wanted to make is that we have now two very big use cases, a big Spanish and a big Swiss company that in their employer brand they created this legacy and this meaningfulness and they did it a really an authentic way and not just I do it once. No, it's a continuous effort. And already now they saw, and the feedback was after a couple of months, wow, we suddenly have tripled our amount of ambassadors. So meaning,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so that means that you create more engagement by doing these initiatives. And then the second thing that, and this is what the Spanish company told us, we suddenly got much more people that wanted to work for a company. So
Yeah,
this for me shows, and this is why I think, and this is my idea about
yeah,
employer branding and why should companies start with employer branding, not because it's fancy, but it really is the necessary. You need that. It's the fuel for your future.
mm-hmm.
uh, and
Yeah,
once we can prove that, then because once Ianka, we could prove that, there's no reason why not starting with meaningful initiatives.
yeah,
Because if you
yeah,
know already by data that meaningful initiatives will create more revenue and will be, in fact, the how you say the vitamin for your growth, then everybody's going to
yeah,
do it,
yeah.
or at least I hope.
Now, on average, I know this is a difficult question I'm asking you, but on average, how much time does it take to see any results of your brand ambassador program? So it's really on average, just to have an idea. Am I talking about months or at least a year, or to have an idea?
I think we talk about months because the biggest and quickest and most measurable result are the amounts of people that apply for a job and the quality of the people that apply
Yeah,
for a job. So, and that's something that can go very quickly.
yeah.
A post, I'm looking for a colleague, and you have 100 ambassadors that are posting something like this on LinkedIn or Facebook, you will see immediately result.
Yeah.
If you talk about long-term result on sales, then we often say like it's not a turbo. It's a very slow process of
Mm-hmm.
changing your company into a new age company, and I think we have our first KPIs basically after 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
So after 1 year, you need to be able to see a considerable, measurable
Yeah.
difference between before and after.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about retention? So you've got your brand ambassadors, they're all happy, they're doing a great job. Um, can they keep up with it, or do they get tired of doing it? And how do you keep
It,
them engaged?
it, yeah, that's a very important question.
Mm-hmm.
Do they get tired? Yes, we have to be honest. Sometimes they do get tired,
Mm-hmm.
but then often it's because companies they imagine that okay, I'm going to use my advocacy program for recruitment, and so the only ingredients basically that they get are
Oh, yeah.
candidates.
Yes.
And obviously that's something that kills ambassadors.
Mm-hmm.
So what we've learned, at least from the 9 years that we are operating, is there's some things we have to keep in mind. One of the things is very important is frequency. But frequency is also culturally, it's almost culturally driven. We also
Mm-hmm.
see a difference between the French culture and I would say Dutch Netherlands culture. Um, and on average, we see 2 to 3 questions of would you be interested to share this with your network? 2 to 3 times a month is enough. Don't ask every day to do this because then you will burn your ambassadors. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
if the ambassadors are commercial people, the frequency will be much higher. You see in the French part, we see that it's even twice a month and not more than twice a month because then
Yeah.
you will see immediately that they will say like, oh. And then the second thing is never give up. This is also something that we've learned. There's lots of companies that say, okay, now it's July, August. It's holiday season. I stop for 2 months with everything, and then I start again in September. And then you will see that lots of people will say like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't do it anymore. So it's a combination of I always say like it's like before when I went to the pub, I always went to my pub at least on a Friday evening, and everybody knew that Patrick was coming on a Friday evening. But I always had to come on a Friday evening to see my network, my people. So the combination of these two, and then obviously there's so many other things you have to do. Obviously you have to share the results, try to have a common goal. There's companies that have once every 2 months they just have a short online session where they meet and greet the new ambassadors like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
welcome, blah 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 blah
Mm-hmm.
blah. So it's building it's basically it's building a community.
Community. Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Nice. So you started talking about yourself going to the pub on Fridays. Are you still doing that?
No,
So, how was it?
there's not so many not so many pubs anymore where I live.
I agree. Yeah, I never hardly went to the pub anyway. But indeed, there are less pubs than before COVID. Why have you become so passionate in empowering organizations to start with employer branding? Because you worked for quite a bit of a years in the travel industry. So, how did you make the switch and why?
So the first switch was another switch, but I was in a travel company that was I got quite a lot of freedom because we work with young people, so I had quite a lot of creativity, and so we were very quickly busy with social media.
Mm-hmm.
1996, we had our first website, and one of the first things I discovered nothing specifically, but what I saw was if you work with genuine material, genuine pictures or video, it works apparently much better than if you work with all these very nice,
Staged.
stock pictures
Yeah.
with the blue sky and the sun. So one of the things that I did A/B testing, and I saw that a picture of a rainy day in New York with a guy with an umbrella, and another picture with a lady in a blue sky. The first one got much more attention than the second one because basically, apparently, people see this more, and this is where the pub comes in. I got the impression, and I think it wasn't the impression, social media is basically more like a pub. It hasn't got anything to do with radio and television. That's the fancy life, the publicity on radio. That's always professional, should look nice, and you have your own branding, which is very important. But social media has a completely different way of creating impact. So that was the first thing that kept me thinking of creating something like this. And then the second one was that we worked a lot with Google, search engine advertisements, specifically in the travel industry. You spend lots of money looking for a flight to New York. Everybody wants to be on top, so you pay a lot of money. But I had a questionnaire with just one question: why do you still choose for our travel company? And 90% said because it's based on friends and family's advice, which is strange because 100% of my marketing money was spent for the 10% of people that took a decision not based on friends and family. So what could I do to encourage people to talk about when I was in the travel industry, it was also about product. So the first step we made, because I came out of a B2C environment, was social see there was external ambassadorship and then very quickly we saw that companies they got the same or even better results with internal ambassadorship, and so we are now where we are today.
Yeah.
Long story short.
But so the pub doesn't really have to do anything with it.
Not really, but it's the same. What happens in fact, basically, social media is the same. It's like in the beginning of social media, I always said like when you go to a pub and you want to sell a ticket to New York, there's two ways to do it. You can do it on the traditional way, like they do it on radio and television, and you can stand on the toog, on the counter, and you can say, New York at $3.99, and you can shout it, and probably people will say like, get out of the pub because you're shouting, you're annoying me. And the second way to do it is you go and sit around the table and you say, guys, I have 10 reasons why you should go to New York this winter. And then you will see that you'll get the attention of people. So it is. There are some links about storytelling and how do you make your story credible. Yes.
But I think a lot of LinkedIn content creators would have something to say if you compare your pub story with LinkedIn, because that's a professional pub, isn't it? LinkedIn.
It's a canteen. Call it a canteen. More.
It's more like that, or a networking event or something.
A networking event. Yes, no, it's networking event. Obviously, yes.
It's the reception. It's the reception.
Yes.
Okay. So we've come to an end of our conversation, Patrick, and I'd like to. Every episode, I wish my guests the best of luck, lots of success, but I do it in the way I've been taught as an actor. Before we get on stage as an actor, we wish each other good luck in a very unconventional way, meaning the opposite side of wishing good luck. So to knock off wood.
Yes.
Just that's the principle. So you have three options, and you can choose one of them. The first one is break a leg. The second one is a French swear word, merde, dikke merde. The third one comes from Yiddish incantation and is toi toi toi. It all means good luck. It all means success, but you have to choose between.
I have to choose. Since I was raised in Brussels, I would say the second option.
Finally, I'm having someone who's choosing merde. Nobody dares to choose that one. So thank you for being my guest, Patrick, and merde.